Well, hello, here we are, age friendly, of course, here on Shaw Spotlight, and we're welcoming the whole program about Hospice Northwest is our program content today. And I'm Rebecca Johnson, the host of Age Friendly here in Thunder Bay. And one of the things that we talk about is end of life and what happens and who can assist us and all the rest of it. So I invited Sherry Koch, who is our first guest today, and we're going to have three different guests, by the way. But our first guest, who is Sherry Koch, who is our Executive Director of Hospice Northwest, is our guest. And I kind of know what Hospice Northwest is, Sherry, but tell the community who is listening to us today and watching.
Wonderful. Thanks, Rebecca, and thanks for inviting me here today. So Hospice Northwest is an organization, a small grassroots community organization, Thunder Bay, started in 1987 by a group of palliative care nurses that really didn't want to see their clients and patients die alone. So they started this program, and basically Hospice Northwest is a visiting hospice service for people that are dying or at the end of their life. And we have 130 volunteers in Thunder Bay and in east of Thunder Bay that visit clients during their end of life trajectory.
So when and really, as I say, when we're getting to the end of our life, we want people around a little bit. Even if you're an isolated adult here in Thunder Bay, how do you access this program?
People can, we have people referring themselves. We have people, families referring their loved ones. We have physicians referring their patients to us. So there's a variety of different ways to access our services.
All right, and you can get that. Now, one of the things you talk about is hospice without walls. What does that mean?
So we aren't a bricks and mortar building. So we are a hospice without walls means that our volunteers can go into a building, can go into somebody's home, can go into a hospital, can go into long-term care, can go into the hospice unit here at St. Joe's and visit clients. So we are a hospice without walls, meaning that our volunteers visit and can help clients wherever their needs might take them. In fact, Rebecca, we can even help clients with grocery shopping. We can help clients take clients to doctor's appointments. There's lots of different things that our volunteers do for their clients.
Right, and you mentioned the fact that you have 130 volunteers. Is that a growing sector for you, or is there? I have to assume there's a need.
There is, and I would say actually, conversely, we are losing volunteers, and we need more of them. It takes a lot to become a Hospice Northwest volunteer. Our volunteers take some online training. There's 13 online modules, and then they come and they see us for 4 face-to-face training sessions. So it's not of the faint of heart to become a Hospice Northwest volunteer, but the volunteers, once they do take the training and become a volunteer, they're just so incredibly proud of the work that they do and are very grateful to be a part of somebody's life at the end of their life.
Right, and do you have a lot of services that you actually that the volunteers can get involved in? You've mentioned a couple of them. Can you expand on that for me, Sherry?
Certainly, we have a variety of different teams that our volunteers can get involved with. They can stick with the palliative side. But we also have a quick response team, and that team gets involved with clients when they are in the last 5 days to hours of life. Our quick response team responds, as it sounds, very quickly. We also have a caregiver support team that sees clients that are caregiving for somebody with a life-limiting illness, and those caregivers go through a lot and need some extra support. We also have a grief and bereavement team, and those volunteers take extra training to help people navigate the tough feelings and emotions that are involved with grief and bereavement. And finally, we have a Journey Home team, and our Journey Home team sees clients that are vulnerably housed, because even people that are homeless are going to die, Rebecca. So our Journey Home team helps helps clients navigate their end of life.
And one of the things that you'd mentioned too was about training, and that's so very important. Do you do that online, or do you do it in person? How do you go about training?
Yeah, so our training, we are an accredited organization through Hospice Palliative Care Ontario, which HPCO. And HPCO gives us access, all of our volunteers access to 13 online modules, and all of the volunteers have to take that training. So they can do it at their own home, on the weekends, evenings, whenever it fits their schedule. And then there's 4 face-to-face training that we do with people. It's a hybrid because, of course, we train people in the region and in Thunder Bay. So it's a hybrid on Zoom or whatever. We train people 4 evenings twice a year.
And sometimes people get a little bit apprehensive as all this training and everything else, and then they say, "Oh my golly!" And then all I really want to do is help somebody in their at the end of their lives.
Yes, but what I can tell you with this training, it's amazing. It opens volunteers' eyes and ears to the types of issues that they might face when they're with a client.
Yes, of course.
Which isn't just your average volunteer job, as you can imagine. So the training is very rich and valuable.
What if you really want to take the training, but you don't really want to go on, because the training would be worthwhile, even if you're caregiving for an individual, your family member or somebody, but you're not necessarily wanting to do it with a number of other individuals. Could you still take that training?
Well, we have a wonderful volunteer coordinator that will convince them that they want to volunteer by the end.
You just keep going,
We absolutely can have that. Although we do have a caregiver workshop that we offer for caregivers. So there's lots of different options. If people are even interested in what this is all about, they could give us a call. We could navigate them through what it takes to become a volunteer, or what it takes to get some services as a caregiver or a client or somebody who's bereaved.
Yeah, and that's really important. Now, one of the things when we were chatting here is you mentioned something about the fact that you are working with people that are isolated and all the rest of it. But what about people that are out there in the community that are homeless? Do you help them as well?
Yeah, so we, Hospice Northwest leads a vulnerably housed working group that meets every 2 weeks. We meet and discuss clients and patients that might need a palliative approach to care. And on that committee is a physician, is some street nurses, and a variety of different people come every second week. And one of the aspects is a volunteer from Hospice Northwest that can potentially bring a vulnerable client to the emergency department to help them get access to care that they might not otherwise get if they went in alone.
You have to have money to do this. There's no way. I know you had a successful walk at the end of May, and are there what are the other ways that you actually get money to finance the programs?
Luckily, we are funded by about 40% of our funding comes from Ontario Health, and then fundraising. Yes, we do fundraising. We have a hike for hospice in May, and then we have our annual campaign in the fall. So we do rely, about 26% of our funding comes from the generosity of people in Thunder Bay and the region.
Right. So money that I always say this comment that money that you raise stays here in Thunder Bay.
Yes, it does.
It's very important.
Absolutely.
Just as we come to the close of this one segment, we have 2 of your other staff members that are going to be joining us in this program. But you have a Journey Home team, and can you expand on that for me as well, Sherry?
The Journey Home team is the working with the vulnerably housed. So another example is the clients might on their own go to the emergency department, and sometimes they're turned away because of addiction issues and that kind of thing. They walk in with a Hospice Northwest volunteer, and they will probably get the help they need more often than not.
Well, and then that's so very important.
Yes.
Because sometimes we forget about the people that are at that, vulnerable or homeless and all the rest, and it's really important that you touch base with them, and thank you for doing that.
Yes, absolutely.
It's really important. As we come to the close of this segment, we're going to be talking a little bit later in our next segment about the fact that we have a grief program coordinator, and what does that all mean when we're talking about Hospice Northwest. Sherry Koch, my guest at this point in time. But Sherry, this is great.
Thank you,
really
Rebecca.
Appreciate you coming.
Thank you for having me.
Thank you. So here we are with the Hospice Northwest. My guest is Jessica Bruce, who is the grief program coordinator with Hospice Northwest. I want to make sure that I get that out properly, Jessica, to identify your title. So when we're talking about a grief program and you have services, so they seem to be expanding or they're growing. What does that mean?
Yes. So, first off, long title, but
Yep.
Hospice Northwest does a lot in our grief and bereavement program. And so when we talk about it expanding, it started about 12 years ago with a handful of clients.
Right.
And now there's such a need in our community that we service over 300 grief clients a year. And all those services that are available are at no cost to families.
Right. Now, when we talk about a grief program, exactly what does that mean?
So what that means is when you call us and you identify as yourself as somebody who has lost a loved one and you need some support following a death, I'm the person that you would work with to design your services. So are you a person that prefers one-to-one support? Would you prefer to meet other people that are grieving and get connected?
Right.
So that's what that really is about how can we support ourselves in our grief.
And I don't think until you're kind of, well, like say, in this position that you really understand what you might need either.
Yeah.
And go ahead.
So it's really my role to talk with people and figure that out. So really, when I get that phone call and somebody says, Jessica, I need grief support, and I ask them, well, what do you need? They don't know.
No.
They really don't. And so it's a matter of trial and error
Right.
of grief programs might work really well for some people. So whether it's grief and gardening, right? How therapeutic is that? Or going for a walk with other people that are grieving. Or maybe it's working with our professionals.
Right.
So there's all options available no matter where somebody is. And it doesn't matter if the death was 3 days ago or 30 years ago, we're able to support.
There is a program called Hearts and Hope.
Yes.
What is that?
So that is my favorite program.
Oh, all right.
We have been running that for over a decade. So what we do is we have a wonderful team of trained professionals that work in the field of grief and bereavement, often counselors or case managers. They take our professional training program, and so they provide support to 8 to 10 clients. So the clients meet every single week for 6 weeks.
Right.
And what we really do is psychoeducation. What are the normal signs and symptoms of grief? What does it mean? Sharing our story, working different ways that we can express ourselves in our grief. And we know that when somebody is grieving, there's nothing we can do to fix it. All we can do is support and listen. That's what people need.
Yeah, that's right. Then you also have a program that's called Circle of Friends.
Yes. So our Circle of Friends program is generously sponsored by Blake Funeral Chapel and Sargent and Sons. So it's a program where we host monthly workshops, and they're on a variety of topics. So this month we have therapeutic art and grief. We're doing a grief walk around Boulevard, grief and gardening, a workshop for bereaved parents. Then we also focus on other topics like grief and mental health or grief and sleep, grief and nutrition.
Right.
So that's what that program is.
It's amazing when you talk about the different programs, and they all have their own particular components, and you can find what works for you. But you have one that's called one grief support, I think it's called.
Yeah, one-to-one.
Well, one-to-one. Okay.
Yeah,
So how do you work that?
So like Sherry was explaining, our volunteers go through our training program, and then they get an additional day with our grief team to explore what grief support looks like.
right.
So clients can get matched with a volunteer. It's really that listening ear on the other end for up to 3 months of support.
Oh, that would be very helpful
And
for
it's
some
so
people.
helpful
Yeah.
to have somebody that's neutral, that's a third party,
Right.
that can listen. And by no means are they counselors, but that's often what we need is not a fix, just somebody to listen.
You do, and I that probably goes for other facets of one's life, but definitely at the end, and when you're grieving for somebody, you need somebody to just talk, or even to vent. Like,
Vent,
to-
yeah.
You know, that, like, why is this happening to me, or whatever it happens to be, but to have somebody that you can reach out to through hospice is really a value. Now, one other program, I have a list, that's why I'm asking all of these questions, but it's called HUG.
HUG.
Yes.
So HUG stands for Help Us Understand Grief.
Oh, all right.
So when I was hired with Hospice Northwest over 2 years ago, we really knew that there was a gap in service for children. Children experience grief,
Yes, they
just
do.
like adults. And quite often children don't have the opportunity to address their grief as children. And we know that in adulthood, what we learn when we're young impacts our grief. So we partnered with an organization called Heart House Hospice. They're in Mississauga. And we're now able to bring their program to Thunder Bay and change it how we kind of need to. So it's monthly workshops, and now they run in Thunder Bay. So they're once a month. We have a trained team that works with children to help children and families express their grief.
Right.
And this program, with the funding from North of Superior Counseling Programs, is actually available in the east of Thunder Bay as well.
So this is really going to expand.
It is. So it is in Terrace Bay,
Right.
Marathon, Manitowage, Nipigon, Longlac, and Geraldton.
Well, that certainly is some of the area that this show actually
Yeah.
airs on, and or is seen on, so they can find that that's available. Now, you're looking at having a conference in November.
Yes, we are. So this started as a little idea of, hey, let's do a conference
Right.
as kind of a circle of friends, and exploded quite a bit. So there's two components to it. The first is the conference itself. It's happening on Tuesday, November the 14th.
Okay.
It's a full-day conference at Goods & Co., so the old Eaton Center.
Oh, right, yeah.
For most of those of Thunder Bay. So we're very excited to do it there, and we're having a keynote guest speaker who's talking just about normalizing our grief. Then we have some morning sessions. Dr. Kathy Cortez-Miller will be speaking, Diana Prairie from Thunder Bay Counseling, for example, in our morning sessions. And then the afternoon, folks are actually able to try some therapeutic approaches. So we have a woman named Monique Mercier. She runs an organization called Kindful Psychology. So she's going to be talking about self-compassion mindfulness.
Oh, all right.
So there's some different techniques that people can actually try at this conference.
So I assume you're going to have a registration process, and people
Yeah.
can register for that.
They
But
sure can.
if you're talking about some of the programs that we just talked about, Jessica, for the last few minutes, how do you register for those programs?
So whether it's for the conference or as a client, you can give us a call,
Yeah.
first of all. So you can call our office, you would speak to me. And then for those that might not be comfortable to pick up the phone, you can go to our website. So it's hospicenorthwest.ca, and you can search grief conference. There's also a services tab, and you can make a referral yourself.
Is this program open for people that are grieving right now, or that potentially will grieve, or just for interest's sake? What would it be?
All of
Anybody?
the above. All
Okay.
of the above. We do a lot of work with people experiencing grief when they're caregiving for somebody. Lots of folks who have experienced many different types of losses, whether they're trauma, the death of a child, any type of death. And that's, okay. It's about normalizing how we're feeling.
Yeah, and I think that's something that we need to get into a little bit more, and admit that you are in a state of grief, and that you might need a little bit of help.
Yeah.
So we got to do that. Jessica, this has been excellent. Thank you for all this information. Jessica Bruce, our guest, and talking as a grief program coordinator with Hospice Northwest. And certainly give her a call, or anybody at Hospice, for many of the programs that they offer to us here in the community. Jessica, thanks very much. Really good information.
Thank you for
Appreciate it.
having us on the
Thank you.
show.
Thank you. Well, here we are again talking about Hospice Northwest, an organization very important for us here in our community and of course region. Suzanne Nurella is the I can't even say this now. You're going to have to tell me. Program coordinator. I thought I had it down, but I'm palliative care.
Palliative care coordinator, yes.
Palliative care. And I'm just telling you before we started today, Suzanne, was the fact that I'm working with somebody who has dementia, who I'm working with as a caregiver, and now I know the difference between hospice and palliative care, and I can't even say the word. So there we go. That's a good start. But if in fact I had the training with Hospice Northwest, because we've talked to Sherry and Jessica about that earlier in the program. So if I go through the training and I'm ready to go, what do I do now? I've got this training. So what happens?
Sure. So the volunteer coordinator would notify me that they have a new graduate of the volunteer program. And then what would happen is, so currently we do have a small waiting list of clients. So what I would do is look at the client base, look at the client profile, and try and match that volunteer up with the client. based on similar likes
Right.
or what the client is actually looking for. So maybe the client wants to go shopping or is just looking for a compassionate visitor, someone to talk about their illness with.
Right.
So then we would make that match based on those.
So when you have the match done, and that must take a little bit of doing, because you have to have people that could kind of get along to begin with and even
Exactly.
talk to each other. So you must spend some time working on that.
We do, definitely. And we never just match a client with a volunteer and say, okay, good luck.
No.
We always make sure that we offer myself to go in for that initial match and we feel it out. We want to make sure that there's a good
Right.
connection, and if there is, then they'll carry on with their visits.
Okay, I'm going to use me as an example because it helps me if it was me what I was doing. So I've got the training. You've matched me up. What do I do with my volunteer that I am now looking after? Where do I meet with them? What do I do with them?
Sure, yeah. So basically, it depends on the needs of the client themselves.
All right.
So, but basically, a volunteer can do whatever the client is looking for within boundaries. So someone might just want them to come over and have a visit, have a cup of coffee with them, maybe go for a walk. They also might ask them to go do some grocery shopping for them, or
Right.
take them to Kekabeka for a ride. It really just depends on what the needs are.
I have to ask this because sometimes it can impact on people. If you were a volunteer and willing and taking, going back because you have to have the training, it's important, and I want to take people for a coffee, is that going to cost me money? Because maybe I can't afford that, but I still want to be a volunteer. How do you manage that?
We would work around it. We
Okay.
would find a way for that match to happen and that coffee to happen
Okay,
as well. Yeah.
because I wouldn't want somebody to say I can't do this because I can't afford to take somebody for coffee. That wouldn't be a good plan. So as long as you can work around those kinds of things, I think that's important.
That's right. Or we might suggest something different that it doesn't cost any money, but we would definitely make it work.
So if I wanted to register for volunteering, I think we have an idea in that, but as a person that needs to have some palliative care, how do I register? How do I know that I even need that?
Yeah. Well, basically anybody who is living with or is diagnosed with a life-limiting illness can put a referral into myself or Hospice
Right.
Northwest. That can come from the individual themselves, or it can come from their family,
Right.
their power of attorney, or it can come from an agency or hospital. So any one of those organizations can put a referral in for this person as long as they give consent. And once that referral reaches me, and it can come through, through fax, it can come through our website, which is hospicenorthwest.ca, and within that website you'll have the grief department, palliative, and the caregiver. And you can click on that link and there's a referral right there, and you can just send it and it goes directly to me.
And it goes right through
That's
there.
right.
You have what they call a quick response team. What does that mean?
So sometimes you have individuals who might not have any family or close friends. They might be living in long-term care or even in their own homes, or sometimes even in the hospice or hospital. And maybe the families they're tired. This individual has been at end of life for quite some time. This allows them to give us a call using the same referral system as I just spoke about, and they just put that it's a quick response, that someone is now actively dying. And so we activate our quick response team, who immediately will respond. They'll go to whatever destination is necessary, and they sit at bedside and they provide support to the families and to the client at that time. For example, if the family member is just exhausted and I just want to go home for a quick shower,
Right.
then that volunteer can stay there and sit bedside so that they know someone is there with their loved one.
Sometimes caregivers get really tired. And so you have a support with them. You mentioned a couple of things, but is there a team there that actually goes and helps that caregiver? Like, they really need some help themselves.
They sure do. Being a caregiver is extremely important and extremely exhausting, like you said. So what Hospice Northwest offers is a 24/7 caregiver support line that's manned by staff and volunteers. So they would just register with me, and I would give that number out to them. They can call it at any time for some support. We also offer a 5-week caregiver workshop series, and some of the topics would include lifts and transfers, medication, personal care, anything that would pertain to your role as a caregiver.
And it's really important that we do that. And I think that the workshops must be of value because people then that are caregiving can talk to each other as well.
Exactly.
So,
exactly. Sorry. And we also have the ability to have it hybrid. So caregivers, because they're so busy, they might not be able to attend in person. So we do offer on Zoom as well in the Hospice Northwest office.
Isn't it wonderful that we have this technology that can allow that to happen now, Suzanne? You must find it very gratifying to work with so many people that are willing to give of themselves to help others.
It's amazing. It absolutely is. I thoroughly enjoy my job, and just the compassion of so many individuals in this community and just in one organization itself is overwhelming.
And there's people that are stepping up all the time to help out.
Constantly.
That's wonderful.
Constantly.
Thank you, Suzanne, very much. And we're going to finish off our program and say thank you very much to Hospice Northwest and to all the volunteers, Suzanne, that actually are part of your organization.
Yes.
So very important in our community. And if you need any help at the grieving part of your life, or you have somebody, certainly give Hospice Northwest a call. Suzanne, Jessica, and Sherry are guests today, and really a program that's well worth looking into if you need it. We're going to close off our program of Age Friendly today by our one senior exercise moment with Linda DePiro. So enjoy that and get ready to do a little bit of exercising.
Hi, I'm Linda DePiro, and today I'm going to teach you an exercise called the bird dog. You can do this kneeling on the floor, and I've opted to do it standing in the chair. Great exercises. It stabilizes your lower back, strengthens your inner core, and improves coordination and balance. So coming to your chair, take your hands underneath your shoulders. Your feet are under your hips. Standing on the front leg of the chair, this is my back leg, I'm going to just lift and lower. I want to make sure that my back stays nice and flat. In other words, I'm not sagging, I'm not arching, it's in a neutral position as I lift and lower the leg. I'm going to give you a few variations here, and we're just going to be doing the one leg. So there's the pulses, turning the toe out, lowering and lifting, right? And you can also pulse that leg as well. Go back to parallel and try lifting your opposite arm and you can do several kind of exercises lowering and lifting the leg. Now keep it there and try to write your first, your middle, and your last name with that leg. From there, bend the knee and extend. Add your elbow and extend. You can make this a little bit more challenging by rotating and extending. Rotate and extend. From here, take your hands down, a little work for your hamstring, flex, bend, send the heel to the ceiling. And you can do this several times. Of course, I would recommend 8 of each. Sit down, just widen out through the pelvis and come up. So, try different variations. As you improve, add more reps. So the bird dog is an excellent exercise for stability, strength, balance, and coordination. So practice, and I hope to see you next time. Bye now.